It's Ash from Super Videos, back for another video for the Walking Dead comic book series. This is going to be my review for issue 170, which was called On the Road. So overall, I think this was a slow-paced issue. Not a lot of things happened. I understand that you can't have some things happening in every issue and you can't have every issue being very exciting, but I feel like this issue fell on the more boring side of the spectrum. But let's go through some of the things that happened in this issue. So this issue was basically broken into 4 parts. One part was at Alexandria, one part was at the hilltop, another part was concentrated on the group that was going towards the Ohio community, and then another section was concentrated on Negan and Dante following him. So let's look at Alexandria first. So back at Alexandria, we have Rick telling Jesus to watch Dwight. Obviously, at this point, given what just happened with Dwight and Rick in the other issue, Rick is not trusting of Dwight, and that's why he wants Jesus to keep an eye on him. I understand where Rick is coming from, obviously. The whole thing with Dwight feels a little out of the blue for me. Feels out of character for Dwight to be doing this. And Rick even brought it up. He said that Dwight has proven over and over again that he's a good guy. So I don't understand why Dwight is acting this way. All of a sudden, I understand that Sherry just died and everything, but there's something to remember here, that Sherry was treating Dwight very badly when they were even together. And when everything was good, when Negan left and everything, Sherry still treated Dwight pretty badly. And, there wasn't any sense of love between them as far as we knew. And given that Rick explained that it was an accident and what happened, I feel like Dwight should at least come to his senses a little bit, but it seems like he's not. So I am a bit concerned about where the story is going with Dwight. So then, on the flip side of that, we have Dwight talking to this one savior. I'm drawing a blank on her name, but they're basically talking about what happened with Sherry, about her death, and about Rick. And she brings up the fact that at this point, they all know that Rick is a good guy and they should trust him, and that there's a big difference between Negan and Rick. But obviously Dwight doesn't think so, and he blames himself for not doing more and not actually confronting Rick further, which is a little out of character for Dwight, like I said. But it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens between them in the future and whether this tension between Rick and Dwight is going to become anything major later on. Then we have Aaron and Jesus kind of talking. First, they're talking about Dwight for a little bit. Jesus saying that he wants to go, that he trusts Dwight. Again, a little out of character for Jesus to just be trusting of Dwight. But then again, he's with Aaron, and as far as we know now, they're in love. So maybe Jesus is getting a little soft. He's forgetting about, the dangers that may be around. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jesus. We got to keep our eyes on Jesus for a little bit. He seems to be losing it a little bit. He is not caring about anything other than being with Aaron, which is a little weird. We have the conversation between Aaron and Jesus. They're kind of flirting and everything. They're talking to each other, which is pretty cool. So that was basically it for Alexandria. At the hilltop, we have 2 very interesting things. The first is William bringing some supplies from the kingdom to Hilltop and basically giving it to Maggie and saying that they need it more than the kingdom needs it. It's a little weird because I thought William wasn't really in favor of this kind of contract that they have of the communities working together, because I feel like there was a little bit of tension between William and the other people outside of the kingdom and even at the kingdom. But everything seems to be well now with the kingdom, and he seems to be okay at this point. But it's going to be interesting to see whether this lasts. But it was cool seeing William and, him bringing this stuff and everything. We find out that Maggie has something in her mind. And obviously we know that Negan is in her mind. That's the only thing that could possibly be distracting Maggie. Maggie needs to know where Negan is, what Negan is doing. So it seems like Maggie can't rest unless she knows that Negan is no longer a threat or that he's taken care of, which is going to be very interesting coming up to see what actually happens. I did some speculations before, but it's going to be interesting to see where they take Negan's story and the whole thing with Maggie, because I feel like there's a lot of potential to create a arc that is very interesting. So it's going to be very cool to see what happens there. So we have Negan by himself, and he kills a couple walkers. Negan makes a lot of Negan-esque jokes, which I loved, but we've basically find out that Dante is following Negan. So Dante basically listened to Maggie. Maggie wanted Dante to follow Negan. In the last issue, that was the cliffhanger. But then we have Negan going back to where he buried Lucille when Lucille broke the bat, obviously. And, he gets very emotional and everything, which was very cool to see. I love seeing these different aspects of Negan. At one time, he is just cracking jokes. He is being very inappropriate. At other times, he is being very serious. He's intimidating. During some times, he's very emotional, like this one. So I love Negan because of these different kind of aspects or these different characteristics that he has. But we have Dante looking at him. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see what Dante does, whether he's just going to kill Negan or if he's just going to follow Negan to see what happens. And something that goes along with that, it's going to be very interesting to see whether Beta comes into play. I speculated that we might see Beta come back and have a one-on-one with Negan. Maybe Negan saves Dante from Beta or something like that. I know in the recent San Diego Comic-Con panel, Robert Kirkman said that Beta will come back in the next 10 issues. So we know that he's going to come back during the next 10 issues. So it's going to be interesting to see whether his comeback has anything to do with the whole storyline between Maggie, Negan, and Dante. But then the other aspect of this issue, which was the focus of this issue, I would say, is the members going towards the Ohio community, or some were close to the Ohio community. So the members that actually went on this mission are Yumiko, Magna, Eugene, Michonne, and Siddiq. Interesting characters to put in one mission together, I would say, but it would be interesting to see what happens later on between these characters. So they're basically on the road, on their way close to the Ohio community, and they basically get attacked by a lot of walkers, and they have to fight off the walkers, which was very cool to see. It seemed a little clunky the way it was done, but I understand that they wanted to do it that way so that it has a lot of suspense, and it's surprising, but it still felt a little clunky, to be honest. But they get attacked, Siddiq almost gets bit, Eugene saves him, and we basically find out that this was a very important part of the story. Eugene saving Siddiq, but we'll get to that. So we have them kind of going through the city, some great artwork. There's one where they're going towards the city and it's dark out. I love that one. And there's even one with Michonne looking up at the building, which was very cool to see as well. But we have them finding some sort of safe spot. They're sitting down, and then we have the conversation between Siddiq and Eugene. And that's the conversation that is connected to Eugene saving Siddiq. So Siddiq says that he wasn't treating Eugene right before, and he didn't really think that he has anything good to offer, but he feels bad now, not only because Eugene has been helping them, has been doing everything he can to help the community, but also at the same time he just saved him. And Siddiq feels bad that he has kept a secret from him for so long, for like a couple months, he said. And that secret, which is the cliffhanger, is that Rosita and Siddiq were in love. So the issue ends with this shot on Eugene. Eugene is very concerned and very shocked, I would say. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there between Eugene and Siddiq. Obviously, what triggered Siddiq to tell the truth and to come out, tell the secret, was Eugene saving Siddiq. So obviously Eugene stepped up and saved him, but at the same time, he triggered Siddiq to speak up, to say what was on his mind, which was very cool to see in terms of story. But it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of tensions this creates between Siddiq and Eugene going forward, and whether this is going to make any difference in terms of the mission, and whether it's going to cause Eugene or Siddiq, or maybe both of them, to split and go on their own, or maybe go back. But what's also very interesting is the fact that Rosita was pregnant right before she died. So it's going to be interesting to see whether Siddiq was the father. Obviously, that's what everything is pointing to, but it's going to be very interesting to see that reveal. Obviously, in the letter hacks, they said that it's going to be revealed in the next issue, whether, that has anything to do with the big secret. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. That was basically it for my review. In terms of a rating, I would give this issue a low good rating. Again, it was a slower paced issue. I wanted to see a little bit more from the Negan-Maggie storyline because that was the cliffhanger of the last issue, and maybe a bit less about the mission. But we got an issue that had more focus on the mission towards the Ohio community itself. But it wasn't a bad issue, it was okay. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the next issue with Siddiq and Eugene, but also with Negan and Maggie and Dante, and also whether Beta is going to come back anytime soon. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.